You know a lot of things, facts, and without revealing anything that's privileged or confidential, would you conclude as a lawyer that there is a reasonable ground to prosecute Donald Trump?
Well, I think there's more than a reasonable ground to prosecute Donald Trump. The question is going to become whether Bob Mueller concludes that you can indict a sitting president. Many legal scholars believe that you cannot. Others believe that you can. And I think really that is the million-dollar question, if you will. Namely, will Bob Mueller conclude ultimately that you can indict a sitting president?
But if you could prosecute the president, presumably you think there's at least reasonable grounds to conclude a felony was committed, and certainly that would constitute a high crime or misdemeanor. So even if there's not a legal remedy, such as a prosecution of the president, it would lead perhaps to impeachment.
Well, I believe that you should be able to indict a sitting president. If it was up to me, which it's not, I would indict the president and I would make the Supreme Court ultimately throw it out. But I think what is ultimately going to happen is that Bob Mueller will prepare a report of facts and evidence that will suggest that the president is guilty of more than one felony, and that report will be presented to the American people and to Congress, and it will be up to the Congress to decide exactly what happens to the president or perhaps the electorate in 2020.
And is the principal grounds for any possible prosecution, or for that matter, impeachment, is it campaign finance violation, or is it something more?
I think it's going to be vastly more than that. There's no question in my mind that the president's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, who he trusted his innermost secrets to for the better part of 10 or 12 years, has a host of information relating to the president's conduct and various things that happened in the 10 to 12-year period leading up to the election. And I think Michael Cohen, as I've been saying for some time, is going to flip on the president, and that's going to be very, very problematic for the president.
Do you have any reason to believe he already has flipped on the president, as you put it?
Well, I have reason to believe that there's been significant communications between Michael Cohen's counsel as well as the attorneys in the Southern District of New York. But I think Michael Cohen has been holding out hope, David, frankly, that the president was going to appear in this very dark forest and lead Michael Cohen out to salvation. And I think what we've seen over the last few weeks is Michael Cohen is beginning to realize what me and many others have known for months now, and that is that that's not going to happen. This is a president that demands the utmost loyalty from everyone around him and provides loyalty to no one, with the exception perhaps of Vladimir Putin. In my mind, the president should have added a second name to the list, namely Michael Cohen.
So are you in communication with Michael Cohen? You've said publicly that you might represent him if he did the right thing. Are you talking with Michael Cohen or his lawyers?
Well, we've been in communication with his lawyers, but those communications have broke off, David, because it's become clear to me that Michael Cohen is not prepared to do the right thing. And what do I mean by right thing? What I mean is he needs to come 100% clean. He needs to release the evidence and the recordings that he has, and he can't continue to ride the fence. Basically, what he's done now is he wants to have it both ways. He wants to tease the American public with these thoughts of him being a patriot for love of country, but he doesn't want to come 100% clean. This is very serious business. There's a lot at stake here. I believe that he needs to come 100% clean, and if he's not interested in doing that, we're not going to have anything to do with him.
Do you know, or do you have a sense of why the prosecutors could actually seize those records? I mean, normally that would be attorney-client privilege in a normal situation, unless perhaps the lawyer were committing an offense.
Well, there's a crime fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege, and furthermore, I think that most of what Michael Cohen was doing for Donald Trump during that 10 to 12-year time period would not fall within rendering legal advice, and therefore there would have been no privilege to begin with. But I want to be really clear about this. In order for the FBI to have executed those warrants, and in order for the U.S. Attorney's Office to have been able to obtain those warrants, there was a significant bar that had to be met. That had to go to the highest levels of the Justice Department. A judge had to sign off on it, and I'm confident that that was not something that was done haphazardly. So they had sufficient reason to believe that crimes had been committed, and I think based on the scope of the records that were obtained and the recordings, that only lends additional credence to why those warrants were obtained.
What is your goal, and perhaps more important, your client's goal? Stormy Daniels' goal. You now are in litigation with Michael Cohen as well as her former lawyer, and now with the president himself on a libel case. What is a win for you? What are you seeking out of this?
You know, a win is very simple for my client and me, and that is full disclosure of 100% of the facts and the evidence relating to this $130,000 payment, full disclosure of the facts and the evidence relating to the bank account from where that payment came, including the influx of millions of dollars paid to Michael Cohen in the months after the election, where it appears that he was selling access to the presidency of the United States. And ultimately, we want a jury to determine that Michael Cohen and the president defamed my client when they effectively called her a liar.
Well, the specific allegations about the lying was the characterization of the person who supposedly, reportedly, she said, intimidated her in Las Vegas, right? That is actually what the libel claim is about.
Well, the defamation claim has two parts. That portion that you just referenced is the defamation claim against the president. We also have a defamation claim against Michael Cohen for suggesting that my client was lying about the affair that she had with the president. And I think, look, millions of people saw the 60 Minutes piece. I think well over 70% came away believing the truth, which is that she was very credible about what happened in connection with that. But I want to be really clear about something. This case has never been about the sex. It has always been about the cover-up, and it has always been about the American people deserving to know when their leaders have lied to them and covered up facts and evidence.
You have said that there are 3 other women whom have retained you. We don't know who they are. They haven't come forward yet. You have not filed lawsuits on their behalf. Why haven't they come forward, and why haven't you filed lawsuits?
Well, because it's up to each of them to determine how much information they want to release and when they want to release it. It is their lives, and they get to decide when that information comes forward, and they get to decide whether it makes sense for us to file a lawsuit and when. And ultimately, they're going to make the determination. And when they make that determination as to what information can be released, we're going to release it.
By definition, they have not been defamed because we don't even know who they are, unlike the Stormy Daniels situation. So what would have been the offense that the president or Michael Cohen would have committed against them, if there were one?
Well, again, each of these instances are different, but basically what we've stated, and it's accurate, that there were 3 additional hush payments made to these 3 additional women in the years leading up to, the months leading up to the 2016 election. And I find it very curious that Lanny Davis has not denied it, Michael Cohen has not denied it, the president has not denied it, and Rudy Giuliani has not denied it. And the bottom line here is if there was a pattern of hush payments made in order to cover up conduct of the president, they should come clean about it and disclose that information. Well,
there's no allegation, as I understand it, that it was conduct while he was president. There's nothing illegal that I'm aware of. You may know something I don't, in paying money to somebody to be quiet about something. That in itself is not a crime.
Well, it is a crime if you do it in connection with trying to win the presidency of the United States and you don't account for it on your campaign finance reports, or you have other people pay the money for you, or you engage in money laundering or other activities or bank fraud in connection with the payments. Those are all crimes.
So it does come back to campaign finance, perhaps, in these cases. That's really what we're looking at and how these things were financed. You have revealed...
Well, it's not just that, though. I want to be clear. It's not just about the campaign finance. It's about potential bank fraud that went along with it. It's about potential money laundering that went along with it. It's about bank and wire fraud that potentially went along with it. It's all about the flow of the money and where the money came from and what the scheme was.
And from what you know, does it ultimately take us back to one or more Russians? Because you've already revealed some indication that some of the money may have come, that actually paid Stormy Daniels, ultimately from a Russian account.
Well, I think ultimately we may find that. We have to have a full examination and a full disclosure to the American people of the inflows and outflows into this account that Michael Cohen set up for the payment to my client and what appears to be others.
So finally, and this is not entirely within your control, the pace of a court. But when are we going to know? I mean, your action out in Los Angeles has stayed right now, but it may come back in September. Do you have a sense of when we'll actually know?
I don't have a sense, but here's what I can tell you. We are moving as expeditiously as possible. I don't think anyone can claim otherwise. And we've been very aggressive in the way that we've approached this case, and we're going to continue to be aggressive. And our first order of business here in the fall is a deposition of the President of the United States.
Which will be resisted.
Well, of course. I mean, I don't think the president wants to sit across a conference room table from me and answer questions under oath, but if he does, perhaps we can do it this afternoon.